Too many people are waiting for the perfect moment, the right circumstances, or a sudden burst of motivation. They tell themselves, I'll start tomorrow, or I'll wait until I feel ready. But the truth is, tomorrow turns into next week, next month, and eventually years pass by with nothing changing. The perfect moment never comes because perfection is an illusion. Those who accomplish great things in life are not the ones who wait for the right time. They are the ones who move forward even when things aren't ideal. Throughout history, we see examples of people who had every reason to wait but chose to act. Look at Moses. He didn't feel ready to stand before Pharaoh. He had doubts, insecurities, and even questioned his ability to speak. But God didn't ask him to feel ready. He commanded him to go. And when Moses obeyed, miracles followed. David could have waited until he was older, more experienced, or better equipped before facing Goliath. But instead, he stepped forward with what he had, his faith and a few stones. And God did the rest. The same principle applies today. Those who take action, despite uncertainty, are the ones who see breakthroughs. Many people think they need to feel inspired before they take action. But action is not the result of motivation. Motivation is the result of action. When you take the first step, even if it's small, you create momentum. And once you have momentum, it's easier to keep going. Think of a car at a standstill. It takes the most energy to get it moving. But your life works the same way. The hardest part is taking that first step. But once you do, things begin to shift. Fear is one of the biggest reasons people stay stuck. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of the unknown. But fear is nothing more than an illusion designed to keep you stagnant. Imagine standing at the edge of a pool, afraid to jump in. The water looks cold. The thought of jumping makes you nervous. But the moment you take the leap, you realize it wasn't as bad as you imagined. The same applies to life. The things you're afraid to do are often the very things that will lead to growth, success, and blessings. God has placed something inside you, a purpose, a calling, a dream, but He will not force you to act. He has given you free will, and it's up to you to step forward in faith. If you keep waiting, you may miss the opportunities He has prepared for you. The door that is open today may not be open tomorrow. The opportunity that is available now may not be available later. Faith requires action. The moment you decide to move even in the smallest way, you will see how God begins to align things in your favor. But it starts with a choice to stop waiting and start moving. Faith is not just believing, it is doing. It is not enough to simply have faith in your heart. You must put that faith into action. Too many people say they believe in God's plan for their lives, yet they hesitate when it's time to step out. They pray for change, but refuse to move when God opens a door. They wait for a sign, a confirmation, or a feeling of certainty before they take the first step. But faith does not work that way. Faith is stepping forward even when you don't see the whole path. It is trusting God enough to move, even when the outcome is uncertain. The Bible is filled with examples of people who took action based on their faith. Noah built an ark before there was ever a drop of rain. He didn't wait for proof of the flood. He obeyed God and acted. Abraham left his home and everything familiar, not knowing where he was going, but trusting that God would lead him. The woman with the issue of blood didn't just believe Jesus could heal her. She pushed through the crowd and reached out to touch his garment. Faith is never passive. It is active, bold, and requires movement. Many people want to see miracles in their lives, but they are unwilling to take the steps required for those miracles to happen. They pray for opportunities, but refuse to walk through the doors God opens. They ask for strength, but never step into situations that require it. They desire blessings, but are not willing to put in the work that comes with them. God responds to faith in action. The Israelites stood before the Red Sea with an army behind them, terrified and unsure of what to do. But God told Moses to lift his staff, and only when he obeyed did the waters part. Imagine if he had refused to act, waiting for the sea to split before he moved. He would have never witnessed the miracle. Faith also requires persistence. It is easy to act once and expect immediate results, but true faith continues to move forward even when things don't happen right away. Joshua and the Israelites marched around Jericho for 6 days before the walls fell. They had to take repeated action before the breakthrough came. Too often people give up too soon. They step out in faith once, face resistance and retreat, but faith does not shrink back. It keeps pressing forward. God calls people to act, not just to believe. He gives visions, dreams, and desires, but they only become reality when action is taken. If Peter had never stepped out of the boat, he would have never walked on water. If the disciples had not obeyed Jesus and cast their nets again, they would have missed the miraculous catch of fish. Faith is not just something you feel, it is something you do. When you move in faith, trusting God, He meets you in that place of action and does what only He can do. Obedience to God is the key that unlocks His blessings. Throughout Scripture, we see a clear pattern. When people obey God, they walk in His favor, His provision, and His protection. But when they resist, delay, or choose their own way, they miss out on the fullness of what He has for them. Obedience is not always easy, and it often requires sacrifice, but it is always rewarded. God does not ask for obedience to control us, but to position us for greater blessing. When God told Abraham to leave his homeland and go to a place he had never seen, Abraham obeyed. He didn't have all the details. He didn't know what the future held. But because he trusted God enough to follow His instructions, Abraham became the father of many nations. His obedience led to a legacy of blessing that extended far beyond his own life. The same principle applies today. When God calls you to step out in faith, to move, to act, He is setting you up for something greater than you can see. But it all depends on whether you obey. There are many who want God's blessings, but are unwilling to follow His instructions. They pray for financial provision, but refuse to be good stewards of what they already have. They ask for open doors, but hesitate to walk through them when God provides an opportunity. They want breakthroughs in their lives, but resist making the changes God has been prompting them to make. Obedience is not about convenience. It is about trust. It is about believing that what God asks of you is always for your good, even when it doesn't make sense in the moment. The story of Peter casting his net is a powerful example of obedience leading to blessing. He had been fishing all night and caught nothing. He was tired, discouraged, and ready to give up. But when Jesus told him to go back out and cast his net again, he obeyed. He didn't argue. He didn't make excuses. He simply followed the command. And because of his obedience, he pulled in a catch so large that his nets began to break. Imagine if he had refused. Imagine if he had let his exhaustion or past failure keep him from obeying. He would have missed out on the miracle. Obedience is not about understanding every detail. It is about trusting God enough to follow Him, even when you don't have all the answers. The walls of Jericho did not fall until the Israelites marched around them exactly as God instructed. Naaman was not healed of leprosy until he dipped himself in the Jordan River 7 times, as the prophet commanded. The widow's oil did not multiply until she poured it out in faith. In every case, the miracle was on the other side of obedience. God's blessings are not random. They are attached to His principles, His commands, and His timing. Those who walk in obedience position themselves to receive His best. It may not always be easy, and it may require patience, but obedience always leads to favor. When God speaks, He is not just giving suggestions. He is giving invitations to a life of abundance, purpose, and divine blessing. Too often, people wait for the right feeling before they take action. They want to feel motivated before they start working toward their goals. They want to feel inspired before they pursue their calling. They want to feel strong before they step out in faith. But the truth is, if you live by your feelings, you will never accomplish what God has called you to do. Feelings are unpredictable. They rise and fall, shift and change, and can be influenced by circumstances, emotions, and even the opinions of others. That is why successful people do not rely on feelings. They rely on discipline. Discipline is doing what you need to do, even when you don't feel like doing it. It is choosing to take action, not because you are in the mood, but because it is the right thing to do. When an athlete trains for a race, they do not wake up every morning feeling excited to run miles, lift weights, or push their bodies to the limit. But they do it anyway because they are committed to the goal. They know that success is not built on feelings, but on consistency. In the same way, your spiritual, personal, and professional growth depends on your ability to be disciplined, even when motivation is absent. The Bible is filled with examples of people who chose discipline over feelings. Jesus, on the night before His crucifixion, did not feel like going to the cross. He prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, asking if there was another way, but ultimately, He surrendered to the will of God. He endured the suffering, the pain, and the humiliation, not because He felt like it, but because He was committed to fulfilling His purpose. If Jesus had followed His feelings, He might have walked away from the cross, but He chose discipline, and because of that, salvation was made available to all. There are times when you will not feel like praying, but pray anyway. There are days when you won't feel like reading the Word, but open it anyway. There are moments when you won't feel like forgiving, working hard, or staying committed, but discipline keeps you moving when feelings try to hold you back. The enemy wants you to believe that you need motivation to be consistent, but that is a lie. Motivation is temporary. Discipline is what creates real transformation. God blesses those who are faithful, not just those who feel inspired. Gideon was afraid when God called him to fight against the Midianites. He doubted himself, questioned God, and asked for multiple signs. Yet, when he finally stepped into battle, God gave him the victory. Esther risked her life by approaching the king, knowing it could mean death, but she did it anyway, saying, "If I perish, I perish." Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite fear. If you wait for fear to leave, you will never take action. If you wait for perfect confidence, you will never step into your calling. Fear is not an excuse to delay, to shrink back, or to settle for less than what God has planned for you. Fear only has power when you listen to it. The enemy wants you to believe that fear is a sign to stop. But in reality, fear often shows up when you are on the verge of something great. The very thing you are most afraid to do is often the thing that will lead to breakthrough, growth, and blessings. Instead of letting fear hold you back, let it be a sign that you are stepping into something bigger than yourself. Let it push you toward faith, not retreat. God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. That means you have everything you need to overcome fear. It is time to stop letting fear be an excuse. Step out, take action, and trust that God will meet you there. Too many people live their lives waiting for the perfect moment, waiting for the right opportunity, waiting until they feel ready. They keep telling themselves, one day I'll start, but that one day never comes. The truth is, there will never be a perfect moment. There will never be a time when everything feels easy, comfortable, and convenient. If you keep waiting, you will miss the opportunities God has placed before you. The time to act is not someday. The time is now. Throughout Scripture, God calls His people to move in the present, not in the future. When Jesus called His disciples, He didn't say, "Follow me when you're ready." He simply said, "Follow me." They dropped their nets immediately and obeyed. Imagine if they had hesitated, if they had told Jesus, "Maybe later," or "Let me get my life in order first," they would have missed their calling. The same is true today. God calls people to step out in faith now, not when they feel prepared. Procrastination is one of the greatest tools of the enemy. He knows he cannot steal God's promises from you, so instead, he convinces you to delay. He whispers, "You have time. You can do it later." But every delay is a missed opportunity. Every moment you spend waiting is a moment you could have spent growing, building, and fulfilling your purpose. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to start. If you don't take action now, you may look back years from now, filled with regret over what you never did. Fear is often the reason people hesitate. They are afraid of failure, afraid of what others will think, afraid they are not good enough. But fear is not a reason to wait. It is a reason to act. The only way to overcome fear is to face it head on. David did not wait until he felt stronger to face Goliath. He stepped forward with what he had, a sling, 5 stones, and faith in God. And because he acted in the moment, God gave him victory. There is also a danger in assuming that opportunities will always be available. The door that is open today may not be open tomorrow. The people God has placed in your life right now may not be there forever. The ideas, the resources, the connections you have today are not guaranteed to remain. If you keep putting things off, you may find yourself in a season where the opportunity has passed. That is why obedience must be immediate. When God stirs something in your heart, do not ignore it. Move forward, even if you don't have all the answers. Nothing in life changes until you take action. Dreams remain dreams until you work toward them. Goals remain unfulfilled until you commit to them. God has placed something inside you for a reason, and He is calling you to act. You do not need more time, you need more faith. The time is now. Step forward and trust that He will lead the way.